Ethan Cole had everything most people spent their lives chasing: wealth, influence, and a business empire that stretched across cities. Yet none of it mattered the night he sat alone in his silent mansion, staring at a photo of his late wife. Since her passing, the world had felt hollow. The only thing that kept him grounded was his 5-year-old daughter, Lily, whose quiet strength reminded him of everything he had lost, and everything he still needed to protect. Instead of drowning himself in boardrooms and meetings, Ethan made an unusual decision. He stepped away from the spotlight and began visiting his own stores in disguise. Wearing simple clothes and hiding behind a different name, he wanted to see the truth: how his employees lived when no one important was watching. One afternoon, he entered a modest branch in a quiet neighborhood. At first glance, everything seemed normal. Customers browsed, shelves were stocked, and the routine moved smoothly. But Ethan sensed something deeper, an invisible weight in the air. That's when he noticed her. Behind the counter stood a young worker, Sara. She greeted customers politely, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. There was exhaustion there, and something else, pain carefully hidden. Ethan watched closely. She worked harder than anyone, yet seemed unnoticed. And when she thought no one was looking, her expression would fall completely. In that moment, Ethan made a decision. He wouldn't just observe this store. He would step inside her world. Ethan lingered in the storage room doorway, unsure how to approach without startling her. Sara quickly wiped her face, turning away as if she could erase the moment. "I'm fine," she said softly, though her voice trembled. It was the kind of answer people gave when they had no space to fall apart. He didn't push. Instead, he stepped in calmly and handed her a tissue from the nearby shelf, pretending not to notice the tears she was trying so hard to hide. "Long day?" he asked gently. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she let out a quiet breath, as if holding everything in had become too heavy. "It's just life," she murmured, attempting a small smile that quickly faded. Over the next few shifts, Ethan kept his tone light, never forcing the conversation. Slowly, Sara began to open up in fragments. Her mother had been ill for months, and the medical bills kept rising. Every extra hour she could work mattered, but recently, her shifts had been cut. Small mistakes were used against her, and she felt constantly watched, constantly judged. "I can't lose this job," she admitted one evening, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's all I have right now." Ethan listened carefully, his chest tightening. There was no anger in her words, no blame, just quiet desperation. It reminded him of a kind of strength he hadn't seen in years. He realized then that Sara wasn't just struggling. She was surviving, alone. Ethan's quiet observations turned into something sharper, more deliberate. What he had first sensed as unease was now impossible to ignore. The store didn't just feel off, it was being run in a way that quietly broke people down. He watched schedules posted and then suddenly changed without warning. Employees whispered among themselves, careful not to be heard. Some were given extra hours without reason, while others, like Sara, had theirs reduced over the smallest issues. It wasn't discipline. It was control. Mr. Blake moved through the store with a constant edge in his voice. He rarely praised, only criticized, and always in front of others. Ethan noticed how the staff stiffened whenever he approached, how conversations died instantly. One afternoon, the tension snapped. A pricing error showed up at the register, something minor, easily fixable. But Mr. Blake seized the moment. He called Sara out in front of a line of customers, his voice loud and cutting. She tried to explain, but he didn't let her finish. "This is exactly why your hours keep getting cut," he said coldly. The customers grew uncomfortable. Sara stood frozen, her face pale, her hands trembling slightly as she apologized for something she hadn't even done. Ethan felt anger rise, but he held it in. Not yet. That evening, he found her again in the storage room, sitting on a crate, staring at her phone. A message from the hospital glowed on the screen. "I don't know how much longer I can keep up," she whispered. And this time, Ethan knew, watching wasn't enough anymore. The next morning felt different the moment the doors opened. A quiet tension settled over the store, as if something unseen was about to unfold. Employees exchanged uncertain glances, and even Mr. Blake seemed unusually alert, pacing more than usual. Then a sleek black car pulled up outside. Through the glass doors, heads turned. A group of sharply dressed corporate officials stepped out, their presence alone enough to shift the atmosphere. And then he followed. Ethan Cole walked in. No disguise, no hesitation, no trace of the quiet employee they had known. The room fell into stunned silence. The man who had been stocking shelves and quietly observing was now standing before them as the owner of everything. Sara's breath caught. She stared at him, confusion and disbelief washing over her all at once. Ethan's expression remained calm, but his presence carried weight. He stepped forward, his voice steady. "I've spent the last few weeks here, working alongside you. Watching. Listening." A ripple of shock moved through the staff. Mr. Blake forced a tight smile, attempting to regain control, but it slipped quickly under Ethan's gaze. "I wanted to see the truth," Ethan continued. "Not reports. Not numbers. People." He turned slightly, his eyes meeting Sara's. "And I found strength where it was being ignored." Then his attention shifted sharper now. "And I found leadership that failed." The room held its breath. Everything was about to change. The days that followed didn't return to normal. They reshaped what normal meant. Mr. Blake's absence was immediate, but the silence he left behind felt just as heavy. In its place came something unfamiliar: fairness. Schedules were reviewed, corrected, and made transparent. Employees who had once kept their heads down began to speak a little more freely. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was real change. Sara kept showing up, just as she always had. She worked with the same quiet determination, expecting nothing more than stability. So when Ethan asked to speak with her privately, she assumed it was about routine matters. "I want to offer you a new role," he said, his tone direct but calm. She blinked, caught off guard. "Me?" Ethan nodded. "You understand this place better than most. Not just the work, but the people." Sara hesitated, her hands tightening slightly. "I don't have experience for something bigger." "You have something more important," he replied. "Integrity." The word lingered between them. At the same time, something unexpected began to unfold outside of work. When Sara met Lily, there was no awkwardness, only an instant, natural connection. Lily's laughter, once rare and quiet, returned in bursts of energy whenever Sara was around. Ethan noticed it immediately. For years, he had been building a company. Now, for the first time, he felt like he was rebuilding something far more fragile. And far more meaningful. Months passed, and the changes that once felt uncertain became part of everyday life. The stores ran differently now: fair schedules, open communication, and a sense of respect that employees no longer had to question. What began as one quiet investigation had reshaped the entire company. But the most meaningful shift didn't appear in reports or meetings. It revealed itself in small, human moments. One evening, after closing, Ethan sat across from Sara in the now peaceful store. The harsh tension that once filled the space was gone, replaced by something steady and calm. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "You know," Ethan finally said, "this place, it's not the same anymore." Sara gave a small smile. "That's because you chose to change it." He shook his head slightly. "No. I just stopped ignoring what was already there." His gaze softened. "You reminded me of that." Sara looked down briefly, unsure how to respond. She had never seen herself as someone who changed anything, she had only tried to survive. Across the store, Lily's laughter broke the silence as she ran toward them, full of energy and light. "Sara, come play!" she called. Sara stood, her smile now genuine, no trace of the quiet pain she once carried. Ethan watched them, something warm settling in his chest. He had walked into that store searching for problems. But he found something far greater. A reason to feel whole again.